Chidimma stood at the edge of the dusty village road, her small bag slung over her shoulder. The air was thick with the heat of the day, and the distant sound of children playing in the village echoed in her ears. She could hear her mother's voice calling from the house, but this time, Chidimma didn't hesitate. She knew she had to leave. "Chidimma, don't forget to send the money," her mother had said, a desperate edge in her voice. "I won't, Mama," Chidimma replied, her heart heavy. It was the hardest thing she had ever done, leaving her mother behind. But this was their only hope. Madame Gold had promised to take her in and give her work as a housemaid in Lagos. Her mother believed it would be the start of a better life for Chidimma. Little did she know, that promise would lead her into a nightmare. As the bus rumbled down the road, Chidimma pressed her face against the window, gazing at the land she had known all her life slowly fading away. She had never been to Lagos before, but her mother spoke of the city with awe and hope. A place of opportunity. A place where dreams came true. But when Chidimma finally arrived at Madame Gold's sprawling mansion, the glittering lights of the city felt strangely empty. Madame Gold, a middle-aged woman with an aura of power and mystery, greeted her with a warm smile. "Welcome, Chidimma," Madame Gold said, her voice smooth, almost too kind. "I'm so glad you're here. You're going to work for me, and your life is going to change. I promise you." Chidimma tried to ignore the knot in her stomach. She had heard whispers about Madame Gold's true nature in the village, rumors that painted her as a powerful woman, feared and respected by many. But Chidimma needed this. She couldn't back out now. At first, everything seemed perfect. Madame Gold treated Chidimma with kindness, offering her a comfortable room in the mansion and even promising to send her to a good school once she had adjusted to city life. Chidimma worked hard, cleaning and taking care of the house, never questioning anything. She believed that things would get better. But it wasn't long before Chidimma began to notice strange things. The late-night visitors, men in expensive suits who came and went with hushed voices. The way Madame Gold would speak in a low tone, always in secret, whenever they were around. One night, after finishing her chores, Chidimma was about to go to bed when she saw Madame Gold enter a room at the far end of the house. It was a room she had never been allowed to enter. Curiosity got the better of her, and she quietly crept towards the door. Through the slightly open door, Chidimma's eyes widened in shock. She saw several other young girls, dressed in revealing clothes, standing nervously in a file. The men who had been visiting earlier were now talking to them, their words laced with promises and money. Madame Gold stood at the center of it all, like a conductor overseeing an orchestra of despair. "Remember," Madame Gold was saying, her voice chilling, "you're here to make me money. Do what they want, and you'll be rewarded. Disobey me, and you'll regret it." The girls looked terrified, their eyes downcast. Chidimma froze, her heart hammering in her chest. This wasn't a place of refuge, it was a prison. The next morning, Chidimma couldn't look at Madame Gold the same way. She had seen the truth now, and there was no going back. She was terrified, but she knew she couldn't stay silent. She needed to escape. But as the days passed, it became clear that escape wasn't an option. Madame Gold had eyes everywhere, and her enforcers were ruthless. Chidimma tried to leave, once, twice, but each time she was caught and brought back to the mansion. "You think you can run from me, Chidimma?" Madame Gold had sneered the last time she was caught. "You're mine now. You belong to me. You have no place to go." It didn't take long before Chidimma realized there was no escape. She was trapped in a web of lies, deceit, and fear. Then, the inevitable happened. One fateful night, after months of being subjected to the torment of forced labor and the cruel demands of the men, Madame Gold called her into her office. "You're ready, Chidimma," Madame Gold said coldly, her eyes sharp. "You've learned everything. You're going to start bringing in clients now. No more hesitation. You'll make money for me, and for yourself. Don't think about running anymore. This is your life." Chidimma felt sick to her stomach as she nodded, the tears she had been holding back threatening to spill. She didn't want this. She didn't want to be one of them. But what choice did she have? Over time, Chidimma came to a bitter realization: this was her life now. She had no way out. She was just another cog in Madame Gold's ruthless business. Years passed. Chidimma had paid her dues, served her time in Madame Gold's twisted world. She had seen the worst of humanity, from the men who came and went to the girls who had lost all hope. She had been forced to do things she never thought possible, and yet, here she was, alive but broken. But one night, everything changed. Chidimma had narrowly escaped a client who had wanted to use her for money rituals. His eyes had gleamed with a sickening hunger, and he had whispered promises of power. She had run from him, terrified, almost in a daze, and that night, as she lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, the realization hit her like a slap in the face. This wasn't her life. She had to change. It was then that Chidimma stumbled upon something that would change her life forever. She was flipping through the TV channels one night when she saw the face of Prophetess Grace, a well-known preacher who was performing a healing service on a popular Christian station. The miracles she was performing were real. The blind were healed, the lame walked again. Chidimma's heart leapt. Maybe, just maybe, this was the answer she had been looking for. With a renewed sense of hope, Chidimma knew what she had to do. She would find this church, and she would seek redemption. But would the Prophetess Grace she admired be as benevolent as she seemed? Or was there something darker lurking behind her healing miracles? Chidimma was about to find out. Chidimma sat on the edge of her bed, her heart racing as she stared at the TV screen. Prophetess Grace was praying over a blind man, and within moments, the man's eyes opened, bright and clear as if he had never been blind. The crowd erupted in praise, and Chidimma felt something shift deep within her. She had never seen anything like this before. Could it be real? For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of miracles. She had nothing left to lose. If this Prophetess Grace could truly heal, perhaps she could heal Chidimma's broken soul too. She had lived through hell and had been to the edge of despair, but in that moment, something within her stirred, hope. The next day, Chidimma made a decision. She would go to River of Grace Church. She didn't care how far it was or how difficult it might be to find. She had to go. The church was an imposing building, its grandeur both beautiful and intimidating. As Chidimma stepped through the doors, she was struck by the aura of holiness that filled the air. The congregants were fervently praying, their voices lifting up in unison as if they had been waiting for someone to come. Someone like her. She approached the usher who greeted her with a warm smile. "Are you here for healing, sister?" Chidimma nodded, her throat tight. I need to be healed." The usher led her to a seat near the front, and soon the service began. The atmosphere was electric with faith, and for the first time, Chidimma felt like she wasn't alone. She listened intently as Prophetess Grace stood before the congregation, her powerful voice resonating with authority. "Today," Prophetess Grace said, "God will deliver. His grace is sufficient, His love is endless." Chidimma's heart pounded as she listened, tears stinging her eyes. She had no idea if it was the faith she was absorbing or the sheer desperation within her, but she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. After the service, Chidimma stayed behind, hoping for a moment with the prophetess. To her surprise, the usher approached her with a kind smile. "Prophetess Grace will see you now." Chidimma entered Prophetess Grace's private office, her heart fluttering with nervous anticipation. The prophetess sat behind a large wooden desk, her eyes kind but intense. "Sit, my child," Prophetess Grace said, gesturing to the chair across from her. "What brings you to the River of Grace Church?" Chidimma hesitated before speaking. She had practiced her words in her mind countless times, but now they seemed so inadequate. I'm lost. I've made so many mistakes, and I don't know if I can ever make things right. I was in a place of darkness, and I need help to find the light." Prophetess Grace listened attentively, her gaze never wavering. "You have been through much, my dear. But know this, God can heal all things. The darkness you've walked through does not define you. It is only a chapter, not the whole story. Chidimma nodded, a sense of peace washing over her. Maybe, just maybe, this was the fresh start she needed. But there was something unsettling in the back of her mind, a sense that things weren't as they seemed. Prophetess Grace leaned forward slightly. To truly accept God's grace, you must first understand His ways. We will begin with baptismal classes. It's a 2-month process. But I can see the potential in you. You are one of God's chosen stars, Chidimma. Chidimma's eyes widened. Chosen? Stars? The word hung in the air as Prophetess Grace spoke with an intensity that made Chidimma feel like the room was closing in on her. You will find peace here. Trust me, child. Chidimma began attending the baptismal classes as instructed, but something about the whole process felt wrong. The classes were filled with strange rituals, talk of connecting with one's star, sacrifices to the heavens, and other phrases that seemed almost too mystical. Chidimma had grown up with faith, but nothing in her upbringing had prepared her for what she was experiencing now. Her suspicions deepened as she observed the other church members. Many of the people seemed strangely devoted, even fanatical. They spoke of blessings and wealth in a way that felt more like a cult than a church. One evening, just before a baptism class, Chidimma decided to visit Prophetess Grace's office, hoping to ask her about some of the things that troubled her. When she reached the door, it was slightly ajar, and she heard the unmistakable voice of Prophetess Grace. Don't worry, the stars will align perfectly for the baptism tomorrow. Prophetess Grace was speaking to someone in the room. We have many young souls preparing. All of them are mine to deliver, to bless, and to claim. Chidimma's blood ran cold. Claim? She couldn't resist. She peeped through the crack in the door and saw Prophetess Grace kneeling before a mysterious mirror. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I will deliver their souls, as I always do. Their stars will be mine. Their glory will be mine. All I ask is that I will continue to perform miracles so that my members will remain in the church and never leave me. Then the being in the mirror responded, I will always grant your wish, but remember. No one can see or touch this mirror, else you will be doomed. Chidimma's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't what she had thought. Before she could process what she had just overheard, Chidimma quickly stepped back from the door, her heart racing. She ran from the church, but the images of what she had seen burned in her mind. That night, she couldn't sleep. The words, deliver their souls, echoed in her mind over and over again. Who was Prophetess Grace really? Was she a healer or something much darker? Days passed, and Chidimma struggled with the truth. Could she really stay in this church? But she knew she had to act. She couldn't let herself or others fall deeper into this trap. She had to find a way to expose Prophetess Grace. Determined to uncover the truth, Chidimma decides to sneak into Prophetess Grace's office to find the mysterious mirror. Armed only with her Bible and the master key she used in her past life, Chidimma prepares for a dangerous mission. What will she discover when she opens that drawer? Will the truth finally come to light, or will the darkness claim her forever? Chidimma's heart thudded in her chest as she sneaked through the back entrance of the church. The building was eerily silent, the hum of the city outside muffled by the thick walls. The faint scent of incense lingered in the air, but it did nothing to calm her nerves. Tonight, she would find the truth. She clutched the master key tightly in her hand. The same key that had once allowed her to steal from her clients during her days of prostitution. She had sworn to never return to that life, but tonight it felt like her only chance to gain access to the truth. No turning back. The church was deserted, the conference had taken the congregation elsewhere. The only sound was the soft echo of her footsteps as she moved toward Prophetess Grace's office. Her mind raced with fear and determination. What would she find? The thought of that mysterious mirror sent a chill through her spine. Would it reveal the darkness that had ensnared so many? When she reached the door to the office, she hesitated for a moment. This was it. She inserted the key into the lock and turned it slowly, her breath shallow. The door creaked open, and she slipped inside, careful not to make a sound. The room was bathed in moonlight streaming through the windows, and everything looked just as it had before. But there, in the corner of the room, was the drawer. The one Prophetess Grace had hidden the mirror in. Chidimma approached it cautiously, her hands trembling. She pulled the drawer open, but it refused to budge. It felt as though something invisible was blocking her, pushing back against her efforts. The air in the room grew heavier, almost oppressive. No. She couldn't give up now. She whispered the words she had learned from her mother, the prayers that had sustained her through her darkest moments. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. As she spoke the words, the drawer suddenly clicked open, and she let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Inside the drawer lay the mirror. It was small but radiated an eerie, otherworldly glow. She reached for it with trembling hands. As soon as her fingers touched the smooth surface, a sharp jolt of energy coursed through her. The mirror's surface rippled, like water disturbed by a stone. Chidimma gasped and quickly pulled her hand back. Her skin tingled, and she felt a strange pull, as if the mirror were calling her, beckoning her deeper into its mysteries. Without thinking, she grabbed the mirror and hurled it to the ground. It shattered with a deafening crack, its pieces scattering across the floor. The sound seemed to echo through the walls of the church, and for a moment, the room felt as though it were holding its breath. Chidimma stood frozen in place, her pulse racing. Had she done the right thing? What had she just unleashed? She left the church and ran as fast as she could back to her apartment the next morning. Chidimma woke with a start, drenched in sweat. The shattered mirror from the night before seemed to haunt her, the images from it still flickering in her mind. She had exposed the truth, but at what cost? She decided she would go near the church and see if anything had happened. When she got to the church there was commotion outside the church. Several cars were parked in front of the building, members coming back from the conference. Prophetess Grace had arrived back from the conference. Chidimma's stomach twisted into knots. She didn't know what she expected, but she knew that what had happened the previous night would not go unnoticed. As she got close to see what was happening, Prophetess Grace fell to ground and started rolling on the floor and screaming, "I am a false prophetess, I have taken your stars, your glory." Pointing at the confused crowd, "They are all mine. Once you baptize in the river, your soul is gone." She kept repeating these words as she started removing her expensive clothes until left with only her underwear. Chidimma's heart skipped a beat. What was happening? "I have led you all astray," Prophetess Grace continued. "I have bound your souls, stolen your stars and glory to gain powers for miracles and my suck." People whispered to each other, their disbelief palpable. Chidimma's pulse quickened. This was it. The confession she had hoped for, but it was more than she had ever expected. Prophetess Grace's voice grew louder. "The church you have trusted, the miracles you have witnessed, they were all part of a plan to enslave you, to bind your spirits to me." She laughed mockingly. Then, with a sudden, sharp cry, Prophetess Grace fell to her knees. Her eyes rolled back into her head, and she began to convulse, her body jerking violently. The crowd screamed in terror. Chidimma watched in stunned silence as the woman who had once seemed so invincible, so full of power, lost control completely. The reporters who had come to cover the conference quickly turned their cameras on her. The images of Prophetess Grace confessing and then collapsing were broadcast across the country. Within hours, the story went viral. The news spread like wildfire. Videos of Prophetess Grace's confession flooded social media, and soon, Chidimma found herself at the center of a growing movement. People began to come forward, telling their own stories of how they had been manipulated, how their lives had been ruined by the false promises of the River of Grace Church. The truth was out. Chidimma felt a mix of relief and guilt. She had been part of something so dark, but now, she had helped expose it. Had she saved others? Or had she just opened a door that could never be closed? Days passed, and the church was in turmoil. The once vibrant congregation split into factions. Some refused to believe Prophetess Grace's confession, clinging to the idea of her miracles, while others left in disgust, seeking refuge elsewhere. As for Chidimma, she found herself at a crossroads. The weight of her own past still hung over her, but she knew that she could never return to the life she had once known. The journey she had undertaken, from the darkness of Madame Gold's prostitution ring to the false promises of prophetess Grace, had brought her to a moment of reckoning. She couldn't undo the years she had lost, but Chidimma now knew one thing for sure: she could choose a new path. It wasn't easy. She had to work hard to rebuild her life, and every day she fought the temptation to slip back into her old ways. The scars from her past were deep, but they were no longer her identity. She found a small apartment and began working as a cleaner in a local store. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. It was honest. But something had changed within her, a new strength had emerged from the depths of her soul. She had survived. She had broken free. Chidimma walked along the street, the sun shining brightly above her. She had come a long way, and for the first time in years, she felt free. No longer bound by the chains of her past, she had made peace with the decisions she had made and accepted the lessons they had taught her. Her journey had been painful, filled with moments of despair and uncertainty, but now, as she stood on the cusp of a new beginning, Chidimma knew that her story wasn't over. She had found redemption, not in the promises of false prophets or the allure of wealth, but in the quiet strength that had always resided within her. And as the days stretched ahead, she knew one thing: no matter what came next, she would never let herself be enslaved again. But just as she began to feel at peace with her new life, the shadows of her past returned. One evening, as Chidimma was walking home from work, she felt a chill run down her spine. She turned around, only to see a familiar figure standing in the distance. Madame Gold. Her heart stopped. The woman who had once owned her, controlled her, and shattered her spirit was back. Chidimma's first instinct was to run, to flee from the woman who had been the source of her torment. But something inside her held her in place. She couldn't run anymore. Madame Gold walked toward her with a knowing smile, her eyes cold and calculating. "You think you've escaped, don't you, Chidimma? But you'll never truly be free. I always know where you are. And you'll always owe me." Chidimma's stomach churned, but she straightened her back, meeting the woman's gaze. "You have no power over me anymore. You can't control me." Madame Gold's smile faltered, but only for a moment. "We'll see about that," she whispered ominously before turning to walk away. Chidimma stood there, watching her retreat into the distance. The battle was far from over. But this time, Chidimma knew she had the strength to face whatever came next. She was scared of Madame Gold's enforcers, but after her encounter with prophetess Grace her courage grew. She decided she was going to stop Madame Gold and save any other girl from what she went through. She went to the nearest police station and narrated her ordeal with Madame Gold. After thorough investigations, the police raided Madame Gold's mansion, arrested her. After her trial she was found guilty and sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. All the girls were freed from her clutch. The road to redemption had been long and painful, but Chidimma had learned one truth that she would carry with her for the rest of her life: true freedom comes from within. And she would never again allow anyone to take that from her. Chidimma's story became one of courage and transformation. Over time, she found a sense of community in a local church that preached love and truth, far removed from the lies she had encountered in her past. She rebuilt her life, forged deep friendships, and, slowly but surely, began to heal. Her story, once filled with pain and darkness, was now one of redemption and strength. Chidimma knew she would never forget the trials she had faced, but she also knew that she had emerged from them stronger than she had ever been before. And as she looked out over the horizon one evening, the setting sun casting a warm glow over the world, she smiled softly to herself. The past could never define her again. She was free. At last.